The rain wasn't falling. It was attacking. It came in horizontal sheets, whipped by a wind that sounded like a freight train. Inside, the storm was quieter, but just as violent. "I saw him take it, Mom. I saw him." My older sister, Chloe, delivered the line with award-winning conviction, a single tear tracing a perfect path down her cheek. "Grandma's emerald ring, from your jewelry box." The accusation hung in the air of our perfectly decorated living room, heavier than the mahogany bookshelves. I, Leo, stood frozen by the fireplace, my hands empty. I'd been looking for a book. "Leo?" My mother's voice was a low, dangerous thing. "Is this true?" "No!" The word burst out of me, raw and too loud. "I was looking for To Kill a Mockingbird for my essay. I'd never take that." Chloe sniffled, clutching a throw pillow. "Maybe he sold it already. He's been talking about wanting those new concert tickets." It was a masterstroke, a plausible motive fabricated from a passing comment I'd made at dinner. My mother's eyes, usually a soft hazel, turned to flint. She saw not her 15-year-old son, but a thief, a liar, a version of my deadbeat father who'd walked out years ago. "Where is it, Leo?" she asked, her voice chillingly calm. "I don't have it. Chloe's lying," I pleaded, looking from her stony face to my sister's subtly triumphant one. They had a bond I'd never cracked, a club of two where I was a perpetual applicant. "Go to your room," Mom said, not looking at me. "Now, we'll talk about this when you've decided to tell the truth." "But I am telling the truth," I shouted, the frustration and injustice boiling over. That was my mistake. She turned on me, a tempest contained in a silk blouse. "Don't you raise your voice at me. After everything I've sacrificed for you, I will not have a liar and a thief under my roof." "I'm not." I was crying now, hot, shameful tears. "Why do you always believe her?" "Get out of my house." The words didn't register at first. They were too big, too final. They bounced off me. "What?" "You heard me. Get out. If you want to act like a delinquent, you can face the consequences like one. Maybe a night in the storm will make you honest." Chloe's eyes went wide with a feigned shock she didn't feel. "Mom, no, it's pouring." "He made his choice, Chloe." Mom pointed a trembling finger at the front door. "Out. Now." There was no fight left in me. The injustice was a boulder on my chest. Arguing was pointless. The verdict was in. I was guilty. I didn't speak. I didn't look at Chloe. I just turned, walked to the front hall, shoved my feet into my worn sneakers, and shouldered my school backpack. I opened the heavy oak door. The roar of the storm and the bite of the wind rushed in. I stepped into it, and I didn't look back. The door shut behind me with a soft, definitive click, the sound of home locking me out. I walked. There was no destination. The rain soaked through my hoodie in minutes, my jeans clinging to my legs. I was shivering, but the cold inside was worse. Each "get out" replayed in my head, a hammer on my heart. I found a bus shelter 2 blocks away and huddled on the bench, watching the world blur behind a curtain of water. Inside the warm, dry house I'd just left, life moved on. My father, Mark, had come home late from his shift at the tech firm. He'd missed the drama. He poured himself a glass of water in the kitchen, hearing his wife, Diane, ranting to Chloe in the living room about tough love and teaching responsibility. He moved to the living room to ask what was for dinner. The large, smart TV was on the default screensaver, a family photo slideshow. As he entered, the slideshow minimized, and a notification preview popped up in the corner of the screen, mirrored from Diane's phone, which was linked to the system. It was a text from Chloe's number to a group chat named Queen Squad. "Chloe, OMG you guys, crisis averted. Little brat tried to pin his stealing on me. Can you believe it?" Friend 1. "No, what happened?" Chloe, "Mom totally lost it on him. Kicked him out into the monsoon, lol." Friend 2. "Wait, seriously? Where is he?"
Chloe, IDC, walking his guilty ass around in the rain probably, serves him right. The ring is in my jewelry box, BTW. Mom would have freaked if she knew I borrowed it for the dance last weekend and forgot to put it back. Leo was just an easy scapegoat. This is hilarious. The messages sat on the 65-inch screen, bright and garish in the dim room. The laughing emojis glowed. Diane was still talking, her back to the TV. And he just needs to learn that actions have consequences, you know? Mark stood perfectly still. The glass of water in his hand felt like a stone. He looked at the text. He looked at his stepdaughter, Chloe, who was now scrolling on her own phone, a faint, satisfied smile on her lips. He looked at his wife, who was nodding along to her own righteousness. A quiet, tectonic fury began to build in him. It wasn't loud. It was deep and cold and absolute. He didn't say a word. He set his glass down silently on the coffee table. He turned, walked to the front hall closet, and pulled on his heavy coat. He took the large umbrella from the stand. "Where are you going?" Diane asked, finally noticing his movement. Mark didn't answer. He opened the front door and stepped into the storm.
The rain on the bus shelter roof was a deafening drum solo. I'd stopped crying. I just felt hollow, numb. I watched a river of rainwater rush along the gutter, carrying leaves and trash toward a drain. Then, a pair of familiar boots stepped into my field of view, blocking the stream. I looked up. It was my dad. He wasn't my biological father, but he'd been Mom's husband since I was 7. He was a quiet man, an engineer who spoke in code and quiet gestures. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't tell me to come home. He just opened the large black umbrella and held it over my head, creating a small, dry universe for the two of us. The drumming on the roof lessened to a distant patter. "I saw the texts," he said, his voice even, almost lost in the wind, on the TV. I stared at him, comprehension dawning. The lie, exposed, not by my pleading, but by a stupid, boastful text on a giant screen. A sob I thought was gone hitched in my throat. He saw it. He knelt down in the puddle on the shelter floor, not caring about his slacks. "You didn't take anything, Leo," he stated. It wasn't a question. I shook my head, my voice gone. He nodded, a hard glint in his eyes I'd never seen before. "I know." He put a firm, steady hand on my soaking shoulder. "Come on, you're freezing. We're going to get warm, but we're not going back there. Not tonight." He helped me up. My legs were stiff. Under the umbrella, we walked past our street to the nicer hotel 2 blocks over. He paid in cash for a room. He ordered hot soup and dry clothes from the concierge. Sitting on the edge of the hotel bed, wrapped in a fluffy robe, watching my dad hang my wet clothes over the heater, the numbness finally cracked. The warmth unlocked the pain. "Why does she always believe her?" I whispered. My dad stopped what he was doing. He sat in the chair across from me, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. "It's not about believing, Leo," he said, his voice low and careful. "It's about convenience. Chloe is a reflection of your mom. Agreeing with her is easy. You question things. You're like me. We're reminders that the world isn't as simple as they want it to be. Today, you were inconvenient to the story she wanted to tell herself. So she threw me out." Yes, he didn't sugarcoat it, and that is a failure I will never forgive. The way he said it, with such final, quiet conviction, made the last of my chill melt away. I wasn't alone. "What happens now?" I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time that night, a small, determined smile touched his lips. "Now," he said, "we go to war, not with yelling, with silence, with paperwork, with the truth on a 65-inch screen." He pulled out his phone. On it was a photo he'd taken of the TV screen, the damning texts perfectly clear. "First, we get warm.
Then we get a lawyer. Then we let the evidence do the talking. He wasn't just giving me shelter from the storm, he was giving me a foundation. And for the first time since the door clicked shut, I felt something other than despair. I felt the first faint spark of justice.